Aaron Tuttle here. It's storm season in Oklahoma, and with that comes torrential rain, high winds, and hail. To protect your home and your family from these threats, the one roofing company you should trust is Ferguson Roof Systems. They've been providing the best in roofing services for nearly half a century. Ferguson is Oklahoma's full-service roofing company, certified with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and a 5-star rating on Google. And with Ferguson now offering Class 4 impact-resistant shingles, now is the time to trust them with your home's roof. Get started today at FergusonRoofSystems.com.
Hey there, Meteorologist Aaron Tuttle with you. It is Thursday night, about 9:40. So we're going to take a look at the forecast once again for Monday. This will be my last update till probably Saturday afternoon. So I do have some plans coming up. So that's going to kind of put the kibosh on any lives coming up for tomorrow. But that's okay. So we'll take a look and see what the data has for tonight. And then we'll, of course, pick it back up over the weekend to see how you need to prepare, see if everything is, changed in the weather model data throughout the day today. So thanks for joining me, especially if you missed the lunchtime live at noon today. So it'll be a good refresher for you as what's coming up. I see you got there checking in from Yukon, from Duncan. Ada's in the house. Atoka's in the house. Let's see, Ron, thank you. Karen says hello to little Larry and Penelope. It's funny when the little kids get all the accolades. I don't blame you though. I'll be wanting more of Larry and Penelope too. David, thank you for the stars. I appreciate you. But see, Joe, you've got some fans tonight. I might just have to hand over the lives to you from now on. I think I'm chopped liver. Renee, send me some stars. Thank you very much. Dottie's going camping this weekend near Stillwater. All right, keep the weather pleasant. You got it. It's going to be really good weekend weather, as long as you don't mind the wind. We have a little bit of wind, but it's Oklahoma. That does happen. You guys on Rumble, thanks for tuning in. And, of course, you guys on YouTube as well, thanks for tuning in. Always good to see you. And we'll get on with the program. So in the comment section of Facebook, I'll put where you can get the link to join the broadcast channel so you don't miss anything. I usually send that out before every broadcast that we, you get to be in tune. Elgin's in the house. Grove's in the house. Who else we got? Shawnee, Ochalata, Dibble. Boy, you guys are just all over the place. All right, let's get on with it, shall we? Let's see. What do I want to do real quick? Let's see. Look, temperature's actually pretty decent. I got 57, so it was a little cool today, and then we warmed things up by the afternoon, so it wasn't too bad of a rebound, but definitely a little on the cool side here for the morning hours. And then we're going to get some much warmer weather than this for the weekend, and we'll show you that here in a second. But first, let's talk about, that's the wrong map, this map. Let's talk about the threat for severe storms. So the Storm Prediction Center does have a large area you see here in yellow. This is an aerial outline for a probability of some thunderstorms in this section, and then it has a little sweet spot here in between. So in other words, what you're starting to see is the developing of an avocado on the map. Let's see, the next day after that one, it shifts off to the east into the Midwest. Right now, the indices for the data isn't all that impressive for the day after as it is the day of. So we'll see, though. It's still early in the system. We look at the model forecasting from the language models, right? The ones that are supposed to be the AI future for us. It does also have a nice little red area of enhanced weather, but it's on the eastern half of Oklahoma with a little hatched area from Oklahoma City to Tulsa, whereas the humans are putting the red area to the west. So I believe this model will be wrong, and it will have to shift to the west, just based off of what I've seen. If we look at some of the other analogs as far as this situation, this setup, similar setups, I should say, because there's no two settings that are the same, but it does have an indication of a little bit of a tornado risk out here across the western half of Oklahoma and into the Texas Panhandle. Same thing with the hail, quite a bit of a probability for hail, not only in Oklahoma, but also in Texas and on up to the north, and also for wind, a much more expanded area. So remember, tornadoes are not very easy to develop, and they are not widespread. They're very small areas that we focus on, so that's why you see those difference in the probability rings. So you want to close that in, a little closer view, you can see Oklahoma City, Clinton, Altus, Lawton, Wichita Falls, Seymour, Woodward, Ponca City, all in the enhanced area of severe weather. Now, these categories, don't get lost too much, because the problem is you can have a tornado on a slight risk, you can have a tornado on an enhanced risk, you can have a tornado on the moderate risk, you can have a tornado on the high risk, or you can have no tornadoes at all in any of those risks. So I know it's just a way of trying to give you an idea that there'll be more storms and or a higher confidence of storms over a certain area. It's just a probability game. But we kind of color code it because the human brain likes to see colors. All right, let's take a look at the upper levels of the atmosphere. This is the jet stream pattern, which will show us the position of the upper level low, and we'll see if it's changed any in the latest runs of everything. So let's see, the European that came out this morning, it finished its run this afternoon. So it's got the low right about like so. The Canadian model, did it really do that? Sure did. It went up to Denver. All right, well, that's a new one. The American model has finally settled down. It's splitting the difference. It's got an elongated trough. I'm already starting to see some discrepancy that may cause this thing to not be anywhere near the promises it was starting to deliver. Icon model, it kind of splits the difference. It's just hanging right around this little cluster group. And the UK Met also has a very large, elongated lower height field. So, interesting. Those are all changes. Well, before they had a more concentric, smaller circle, and now it's expanding, elongating. So more of an open wave trough. And that changes a lot of things when it comes to severe storms and also potential for tornadoes. So that's why, again, when you're this far out, you don't start the gloom and doom hype at this point, because too many things can change, and we just saw a little bit there, and we'll see how those perturbations go. But needless to say, the storm system is in the right place and in the right time of day to at least get some thunderstorms going out here in the eastern Texas Panhandle and into the western parts of Oklahoma. Given the setup. So the close-up view of that does have the upper low out here across the New Mexico, Colorado zone for this typical European data. It does put us in what we call the southwest flow aloft. Right, so this is where our ripples of instability come in. These little colors, they all kind of come in here, and this is all general lift, which also helps to cool the column of the atmosphere. And what I did notice here, in the data of the European was interesting. It was a new signal that was not there yesterday, and it could be the bust signal. All right, so a lot of times the models will have a tough time tracking these little perturbations down here in the flow of the jet stream pattern, and they can sneak in here. All right, this is a pretty strong signal for this one, for example, and this is for Monday afternoon already. Right now, normally we would see more focused in here, but we're actually seeing them out ahead in here. We're going to see what that looks like here in a minute. But we look at the wind field aloft, because you have to have shear in the atmosphere to produce rotating thunderstorms, aka supercells. So at 300 millibars, they have a nice jet stream going up in this fashion. Technically, like Oklahoma City at this point in time, isn't really in the favorable quadrant of the jet. That would be kind of in this fashion here, kind of in this sweet spot, really, up into Kansas. And another favorable spot would be down in this area as it zips through later overnight, but at least for the time being of things going. But overall, the upper flow does help to produce and evacuate air at the top to get some thunderstorms to go. At the 500 millibar level, this is what we call the speed max level. This adds a little extra spin to the storms, if you will, if it can come in at the right time. And the model does seem to enhance a nice little area here in red, which indicates a higher speed coming in, right place, right time, in a kind of a west-southwesterly direction. That's up around 67, 80 knots, so very good. All right, again, Memphis if you want storms. Let's go to the 850 low-level jet. All right, so we got some wind speeds gusting up to around 60 knots. Man, that's fast. Comes all the way from southern Texas all the way in. So that component is there. Now, we'll notice the last few runs, the convergence line for the 850 has been shifting to the west little by little. When it first started, I think it was out here, and so we just keep going more and more west. All right, now let's take a look at the surface pattern with the dew point values. So it looks like moisture will be here. Doesn't seem to be a question this time around. And by moisture, we mean 60 dew points, which is adequate for supercell storms or even severe weather in general. And yes, tornadoes, because at least in Oklahoma, 60s is really the kind of where you want to get things going, up to 70s. So it's in the ballpark. The higher those numbers, the better storms have to work with for instability and moisture, etc. Let's go to that's the European AI model, and we talked about this earlier. Let's show the dry line with this. Is the difference between the moist air and the dry air. It's basically like a little mini frontal zone. You get convergence along that zone, which means the air that comes together can't go into the ground, right? So it's got to go up. So it starts to go up and gets little eddies. Now on the back side, you don't get anything because it's dry. On the east side, you get the moisture that entrails it, gets up, gets to build some cumulus clouds, and those will build up into eventually some thunderstorms if every other ingredient is there. Okay, so that's the AI model. Here's the European without the AI component added to it. Very similar. So some really good dew point values in this region. Let's go to the Canadian. It's quite a bit east, back in this fashion. The American model, the GFS, is also quite a bit east. Icon model is back to the west, closer to the European, and the UK Met. It's got a weird, there's a little dry punch that comes in, again, depending on how the upper level flow is. So it kind of snakes it, something like this. So a very weird looking dry line. But point being is, there's still, the consensus is out here in the eastern Texas Panhandle and far western Oklahoma for the best ingredients as far as low level lift and moisture, because all these winds are kind of out of a southeastward direction. Okay, so now let's see what that looks like. Now, this is what I saw today. I was like, this is gonna be our new trend. So this is the mid-afternoon, so about 4 o'clock or so. All right, and you're starting to see a lot of little showers here across Oklahoma, right? A little heavier shower up north, maybe an elevated thunderstorm. There's a thunderstorm down here. These are little signals in the data, right? And out here on the dry line, okay, that would be typical. So but if we were to look at the atmosphere around central Oklahoma during that time, what we have is a lot of, get that off of there, a lot of moisture trapped in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere, a lot of cloud cover. All right, that's a lot of insulation, or excuse me, lack of insulation, which is going to kind of tamper the warm up. All right. Also, we do have a pretty strong cap right here, in this little notch here, but we have instability that starts from this point up. So we have what we call elevated instability. So it could be where we start to get these little light spotty showers, maybe some elevated thunderstorms in this mess. Remember how the other day we had, rain off and on some cloud cover before the event, and then the event really wasn't all that? We could be a repeat of that, off these little signals here. But regardless, it looks like there is a southeast wind going to kind of a south-southwesterly direction. So you do have a little bit of a hodograph curve for thunderstorm development, and the analogs do indicate some pretty good hail, even if it's elevated in this environment. So that might be a signal that starts. So let's take a look, see what happens over the next 3 hours with that. And look at that, from 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on to 7, we get just this cluster of just light rain with some embedded elevated thunderstorm activity. All right, so that's not going to do too well for trying to get supercells to develop. Now, if you look out here in the Panhandle, what happened to our thunderstorm that was trying to get going? It's got a couple signals up here to the north, but other than that, didn't really seem to materialize much. If we do look, though, at the forecast sounding for that, it does indicate still very good shear. And for the Panhandle, this is really good, especially a dew point of 64, temperature of 72. Therefore, the model's going nuts. So it's got possible hazard type of a tornado, definitely in the EF3 to EF4 category with over basically grapefruit size hail, no cap at all, and a lot of cape. So this is an ideal forecast sounding for storm chasers out here in the Panhandle. Now, the European is not a convective model, so I don't want to stretch the data in the signal it tells me too much. But again, we look for little things to try to paint a big picture. All right, so let's go on into the evening hours from there. Well, at that time, between now, let's see, it was at 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, the showers, that little disturbance that we saw in the upper levels of the atmosphere, remember I showed you kind of was early in this spot in the data? It looks like it shifted off and took this other stuff with it, right? So that's what I'm saying. We could have a little early show that kind of messes things up, which is fine, because if it messes up the atmosphere, then you have a lower threshold of severe weather. But it does try to produce some other thunderstorms here by that time period. This is usually when the low-level jet kicks in, so shear is a little stronger. Let's see what the atmosphere looks like, though, that you're working with. Well, very high bases, because we have a monster cap, which means everything that's developing at this point in time is all elevated and not surface-based. All right. Now, the model's still going to go with this hazard type of a marginal tornado, etc., just because the shear is decent. But these other factors are going to limit that. The SINs are very, very strong. So what this could mean here as we head into the evening hours, any new redevelopment will have to be basically elevated in nature, which eliminates the tornado issue and just basically some hail makers with some heavy rain and maybe pockets of wind. All right, let's go into the midnight hour, and you can see how those blow up on the I-35 corridor from Oklahoma City on up into Kansas. And again, if I were to take a point forecast sounding, same idea, nice strong jet here. Winds do back at the surface just a little bit and veer with height. And then, of course, you still got that monster cap. So that should mean that these are all elevated at that point in time. So, again, no tornado threat. What should that occur? Now let's go to the next hour, and then they eventually fall apart just because the cap keeps building in and they just can't keep going. So there you go. So if this were to be the output as is, that's not that bad. That's not a big of a deal. Which is fine with me, right? Let's take a look at the tracks, though. So model does try to show you where, quote, supercells rotating storms would be. Now remember, if we end up being elevated, then this is basically just a hail track here. And this might be something that comes earlier in the day or later. And then now these up here could be maybe tornado producers. It just kind of just depends on how everything goes. And right now, the data is not all that favorable if you have to really look at it and dissect it. Let's take a look at the American model. So the American model came in line with the others. This is its midday run here, and it's got some thunderstorms developing out here in northwestern Texas. If we look at the atmosphere there, we have a couple of issues. We have some really good instability, so no problem with the cap. Temperatures warming to the mid-80s. So they're decent Cape values, decent hail indications, right? But only a marginal tornado. And you're like, well, why is it a marginal tornado? Well, because look at these winds. You see how they're pretty much all out of the south, and they eventually veer to the southwest by the time you head up to around, 2 kilometers plus. So what that means is there's not a lot of turning with height at the lowest elevation. So that means these storms will probably rotate a little bit, and we'll have a little bit of hail, but as far as producing a tornado, they lack one of that major component. Now let's go on into the next 3 hours, and look what it does. It just blows up all across the I-35 corridor, back down I-44, on into Wichita Falls area. Now this is a multicellular squall line signal from the GFS, from the American model. If we look at this, the cap, once again, is starting to build in, and you look at the shear, and it's pretty much all linear. So very difficult time to get a tornado in that environment. So sometimes in this case, you might have an embedded tornado, like an embedded supercell within the squall line, but with the cap building in, that usually kind of counteracts that. However, if a squall line can get going with that decent shear in place, even though it's a little linear at the surface, that is when you get those QLCS tornadoes that develop along the leading edge of the squall line. So let's go to the next forecast hour up to the 10 o'clock. So as you can see, this one is a little different than the European. It's much further east now to Tulsa by 10 o'clock, rather than still the I-35 corridor and still holding together. And we did see in the data, the first run, even this one, see how it kind of bows out like this? So we might have a little bit of a damaging wind, bow echo type signature. This might be an LWEP, line echo wave pattern down here, which sometimes you might have a little comma head circulation that could produce a tornado. That would be, of course, near the Tulsa area, should that were to happen. That's embedded within this system here. Otherwise, what it really does is helps to increase the jet from aloft down to the surface. So you get a little damaging wind component, and yes, you still get those little QLCS tornadoes that can happen on the leading edge. If you don't know what those are, they're like baby tornadoes, like EF0, EF1s for the most part. It's very rare to get one stronger than that, and they usually don't last very long. Usually on the order of seconds to maybe a minute. So it's on a rare case, they can be a little bit longer than that, but typically if you're going to have a tornado, that'd be the one you want. But anyway, that'll be moving off to the east, and by midnight it starts to fall apart once it gets into Missouri and Arkansas, as once again that cap builds in, etc., etc. So again, looking at the data tonight, you have to kind of pick your poison. Is it going earlier? It was a choice of supercells with the European and then a squall line with the American. Tonight, the Europeans like, well, how about just multicellular, just some hail? We kind of mess everything up for you, and then I got some elevated clusters of multicellular stuff, kind of a half squall line, half cellular, individual isolated cells. All right, that's pretty messy. That's not exactly clear. And then the GFS just blends it all together and says, we'll just get you a big squall line with some heavy rainfall, 1, 2, 2.5 inches maybe. Some of these harder hit areas, so some brief flash flooding is a possibility in that deal. Let me look. The new runs came in here at the last second, and let me see. This will only go out till Monday morning, but I just wanted to see what it looked like for the track of the low, if it told me anything. And then I'll show you the rest of the forecast for the weekend, and etc. All right, so there's Monday morning. Let me see what it does with the dew points. So this is the NAM model, so it goes out to 84 hours. So this is why we're not quite in the window yet. That's why I say pretty much wait till Saturday, because it'll give a full day tomorrow of having this data come in for the model to work with, and then it'll kind of fine tune it. We'll have better resolution on it for Saturday and Sunday, of course. But anyway, so tomorrow will kind of give us a better idea. It'll be within our window that we're looking at. But in the morning hours, I'm just looking at what it has for the data, which looks like it is going to set up a dry line out here into the eastern Texas Panhandle, the way this is looking. It's got a lot of dry air at the lower levels to work with and a monster cap. I mean, monster. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Like I said, it's what sometimes the forecasters will do. They'll just look at pattern recognition and go, well, in the past that produced a pretty good event, so we'll just go with that and then watch how the models, fine tune things. But here's a look at the temperatures, by the way, long term. Over the weekend, we're going to be close to 90 here in central Oklahoma, and 90s in northwest and southwest Oklahoma. Also warm next week as well. We do get some cooler weather in here toward the end of next week, so back in the 40s at night and 60s during the day. So you got a little bit of weather for everybody. It kind of depends on what your cup of tea is. Do you like it hot? Well, we got a couple days for you. If you like it mild, got a few days for you. And if you like it on the cool side, got a few days for you. All right, so let's go on to the big state picture. I want to show you what that looks like temperature-wise for the weekend ahead. In case you have some outdoor plans, you do some more gardening, you should be in good shape because the weather seems to want to improve in that aspect. No threat of rain, that's good. It will be on the windy side from the south, so you'll have to deal with some gusty winds. Let's take a look at temperatures here first. So on Friday, we're going to, oh, by the way, let's see, earlier today, what was the data for Friday morning? Yeah, in prior data set, we had some 30s sneaking in up here in southeast Kansas and almost about to the border. So it could be some patchy frost in this area, but otherwise no freezes are expected. All right, so let's go on. It's the afternoon. We're back into the 70s across the state. Some 80s out here in the Panhandle. Otherwise, it's big reds, but it's all 70s. All right, let's go on to Saturday. And right back into the 70s for the afternoon. Might even squeeze out. Do I see any 80s? Yeah, there's Tulsa and there's Bartlesville. So yeah, so 70s and some 80s. Okay, and then on Sunday, that's the real warm day. So Sunday afternoon, like I said, this is a model blend. It kind of skips hours, so it won't get the peak for the high. But the day I looked at earlier today had some 90s sneaking in up here, some 90s down there, and we were in the mid to upper 80s in central Oklahoma and northeast Oklahoma. Now, wind is obviously also going to be strong. We'll look at a model blend here as well. So again, from out of the south, so tomorrow, some gusts higher, up around 25 to 30 across the western half of the state. A little obviously calmer to the east where you don't see the colors on the map. And then let's go into Saturday. So a little breezy overnight, Friday night. And Saturday just jump right up into the 30s. Looks like statewide. So wind gusts over 30 miles per hour in some cases. And let's see. Whoa, what was that big one right there? That's close to 40. Yep, overnight for Saturday night. And then on Sunday, once again, let's see, right there, midday into the afternoon. Not terrible, not nearly as windy as what Saturday was. And then, of course, they'll pick back up Sunday night because the storm system comes in. And then here is a look at Monday. So quite a bit windy out here in New Mexico and the Panhandle region. And that stronger wind will move east for Monday into Tuesday across Oklahoma and into Kansas and Nebraska and up into Missouri during the day on Tuesday. So there'll be a lot of wind gusts from 40, maybe even 50 miles per hour up here. So there'll be a few areas of some power loss just because of the strong winds, not necessarily because of storms. But you could have some power losses due to storms too. With this situation, we end up getting some decent ones. So that's what I have here for you. If you've watched me the last couple of days, none of this should surprise you. So if you're new, that's what we looked at here for this evening. I'll just check and see if any of the data has come in that would be worth looking at before I sign off, and don't see anything that's helpful. The one thing that I detest about changing our time clock going forward is that the model data doesn't come in until at the very earliest 9:30, and the longer stuff it takes till 10:30 for it to come in. So I don't really get to see that new data coming in until then. And even the TV guys, when they do their forecasts, they're in the same boat at 10 o'clock right now. They've had to make their forecast for the show, and they're having to use the same data I did, which comes in there in the middle of the day, and they really don't have most of the evening stuff. And so that kind of stinks, because you really like to have as much data as you can in case there's some last minute change you need to put in there. But for right now, everything's kind of holding steady. The biggest change I've seen last couple of days is to murky the waters. So it's not a clear-cut severe weather episode as far as the type of storms you're going to have. If they're going to be supercells, they're going to be a squall line, or even a multicellular hybrid mix. If it's going to be a QLCS type tornado event, or a supercell event, or no tornado event. If the shear is going to be too linear versus more directional. Instability now all of a sudden is in question because the European says, how about I just make it rain, in the middle of the afternoon and cool things down for you, and just give you a little bit of hail and that's it. And therefore I rob you of your tornado potential later. So there's a lot of things that can happen that can mess that up, and so that's why you don't put too much excitement into the forecast you'll see online or on TV when you're at an event that's 5 days away, I think. So I think yesterday or day before, people were really kind of starting to hamper on it. You can kind of mention it. We might have some, severe storms on Monday, and that should cover it. I mean, that gives your awareness, tells you, the day of concern. It tells you, okay, we might have some severe weather that day. All right, well, pay attention when we get closer. Is how I would approach it. So if you're kind of on the deal where you're a little bit on the anxious side, then that's really what you should do. Honestly, you don't need to do anything more than that. Honestly, I wouldn't. Me personally, I don't care. I mean, I would only start to look at it when I'm within 48 hours. Why? Because I know that's when the data is the best. Beyond that, too many things can change. So if I'm not going to get worked up over it, you shouldn't get worked up over it. Now, everybody else is getting worked up over it because they want to. They want the storms. They want the tornadoes. They're going to look for everything they can find to fill up their gas tank, go driving 400 miles and see something. So those are the people that can get you all worked up. And a good buddy of mine, Reed, that's what he does for a living. So he gets really excited about setups. And now I will say he is honest, though, when he does look at them. So like if he'll do some model data stuff, he'll point out some of the inconsistencies and what is some weaknesses. But his overall mantra is chasing tornadoes, right? So he's always going to look for it. He's always going to want it because that's what he does for a living. So, make sure you understand that excitement level from him versus my excitement level, which is, I'm like the guy that says, get off my lawn. I ain't got time for this. So it's a completely different approach. I think what happened, I think it's burned out on severe weather. I think, when you're young and dumb and hungry out of college and stuff, you get all excited about that and you want to live it and breathe it, experience it. And I've done that so many times, I'm over it. I'm ready, I'm moving on. I'm like, been there, done that. So anyway, so I just call it like I see it. Allison Reed gives me anxiety. I know, right? I'll tell you what, though, he reminds me of a 2-year-old. And a 2-year-old as in the ones that have the unlimited energy that you wish you could just tap into and just take a little bit of. That's all I want. I just want a little piece. I want a piece of the energy. I can't handle all that other nonsense. That's too much energy for me. I just want just a little bit, just to keep me from having to drink coffee. Anyway, that's it for me. Like I said, I'll be out tomorrow as far as live forecasts go. I'll be back to do some lives for you on Saturday, which is fine because that's when the best data will be starting to come in anyways. And I'll be able to fine tune both placement and time and all the other details that are required when you're dealing with a severe weather event. That way everybody knows, the best stuff. And that's it for me. Let's see, you guys. Make sure you get my weather app, AT's Weather to Go. If you don't check in with me, you don't see more updates. That way, at least you have a method to get the storms if they do come your way. Remember, it is based off your GPS location, and if you put an address in the app, and you can put as many as you want. So if you want to track your friends and family, your kids and grandparents, all that kind of stuff. And so it'll send, if there's going to be a tornado in the storm, it'll warn you with the twisting storm alert. If you're in the track, give or take, there's a little wiggle room. It's not much. It's like a mile or so. But if you're on that track, it'll send you the warning. If you're not in that track, it won't bother you. And other apps will just send you a blanket tornado warning for the whole area, which you could not be anywhere near that thing, and then your app is going off, right? And then you're panicking and hitting the deck. So my app is kind of like what I do for you as far as I want to pick out the little spots on the map where I think the trail is going to be. So that mindset versus just tell you the whole state of Oklahoma needs to take cover. No, you don't need to do that. So my app is the same way. It doesn't want to warn the whole county. It wants to pick that one spot in the county and then track it along a little street area. So that way it's very hyper localized. So a very low probability of or very false alarm ratio. So in other words, you don't be false alarmed all the time, right? But you do want to detect the good stuff and tell you if you're in the path. So that's kind of how it's designed. It's called AT's Weather to Go. It is free. It's on Apple, Google Play. You search my name. You should be able to find it. Okay, so Debbie, oh goodness, you're cute. So anyway, so that is it for me. Like I said, we will track over the weekend and see if it still looks like it's a significant weather event or if it's just a garden variety stuff we get here all the time anyway. Either way, I'll have the answer for you. Guys, have a great rest of your Thursday night. Sleep well. Have a good Friday, and we will see you over the weekend. Take care.